4 years ago today, my entire family emigrated from the UK to Portland, Oregon, and as part of the moving process, we had to say goodbye to our 2011 UK spec Japanese-built Nissan LEAF. It had become one of the highest mileage Nissan LEAFs in the entire UK, and when we sold it, it had 80,000 plus miles on the clock. Fast forward 4 years, and the car that we purchased second-hand to replace it, this 2013 Nissan LEAF, now has far more miles on it than our original LEAF did when we said goodbye. And alongside cover all of the new cars that you can buy today, we also like to cover used cars and how they're faring after many years of use. This car has now been on the road since 2013. It's now 2019. So how is it faring after 6 years of use and 4 years with the Gordon Bloomfield clan? My partner still drives this on a daily basis. It's now doing 50 miles a day round trip to and from work. But how is it holding up? How is the battery capacity? How's the range loss? Is it still a practical daily driver? Let's find out. So I guess one of the things that you probably want to know is how the battery pack is faring after 86,979 miles. Yeah, I had to check. This is not my car. I've got the Leaf Spy app, which is a great thing if you are a Nissan Leaf owner and you want to know some extra information about your car's battery pack. We've done a video on it in the past on this channel, but I've got it here and I'm just reading up some stats here from the app. Now, according to this, the car has done 173 quick charging sessions and 4,647 level 1 and level 2 charging stations, which translates to just using a standard home charging station or the granny lead, or maybe a slow charger when you're out and about. We sometimes plug in at the airport and charge it there. Now, the amp hour status of the battery is 49.63 amp hours. The state of health is 75.89%, and the health itself, or the HX, is 63.8. So far, we have lost 2 of the capacity bars. Now, there are 12 segmented capacity bars on the Leaf's dash. We've lost 2 of them. While we obviously don't own our original Nissan Leaf anymore, I understand that this car is doing far better than our original Nissan Leaf was doing. I believe it's lost 4 or 5 capacity bars now. Last time I spoke to someone relating to that vehicle, it had got about 86,000 miles on the clock, and it had lost 4 capacity bars. So this is doing much better. It's got 2 capacity bars lost rather than 4. Now, this car was built in Smyrna, Tennessee in 2013, and it uses a slightly different battery cell chemistry to the original Japanese Nissan Leafs, but nevertheless, it's still doing great. In terms of daily range, when my wife gets in this on a daily basis, the car predicts that it can do anywhere between 50 and 70 miles of range per charge. But the Nissan Leaf's guessometer, that's the thing that tells you how far the car thinks it can go, changes quite frequently, and it changes based on your most recent driving experience. And the challenge for that is we currently live 800 feet up in the hills, not far from here. And the challenge with that is obviously you come back in the evening with an empty battery pack and you climb up those 800 feet. We are almost at sea level here, climb up to 800 feet, and that has a significant impact on the car's range. So when you get in it in the morning and it's fully charged and you're ready to go, it might only say it's got 50 or 60 miles of range remaining. But as soon as you get to the bottom of the hill, it set itself back up and it says anywhere between 60 and 70. So I would say a real world estimate, a real world achievable estimate for this car right now is between 55 and 65 miles of range. That's at freeway or motorway speeds. That's with the air conditioning on. You can do 70 miles still in it, but it really is a push. While we're on the topic of battery degradation, there's something really interesting that we've noticed. That is that the battery degradation in this car has slowed down. The rate of change of capacity loss has slowed down. So last year we did notice a dramatic drop in range. This year, not so much. And since early June, we've been driving this car 50 miles a day to and from work. So we now live 50 miles round trip from where the old Transport Evolved studio used to be, which also happens to be just down the road from where my wife's current office is. So she's doing 50 miles a day in it, and she's coming back with anywhere between 5 and 15 miles of predicted range remaining on the odometer. On a really bad day, if it's raining heavily, if the weather is cold, it's less. If it's a really hot day and she's had the air conditioning on, it tends to be less. But on an ideal day with ideal situations, she's coming back home with between 5 and 15 miles of predicted range. And remember, she's coming back to a house that is up at 800 feet, which is not too bad at all. Let's talk about the interior and how this car has fared since then. Now, this is the higher end variant of the Nissan LEAF. It does have the leather trim, it has the around view monitor system, and we use this car as a family car. It is put through hell and back. It's not a car that just takes you to work and back. It's used at the weekend. My wife is into woodworking, so she carries wood in it, she carries lumber in it, and very often, you know, she's got large pieces of wood in the car next to her. She also takes the dogs out. We've got a doggy hammock that we put in the back of both of our cars. In terms of the leather itself and the seats itself, there's not really too much in the way of wear and tear. The only thing I would say is that the back seats now have succumbed to the toenails of our Labrador just a little bit. But all in all, the car cleans up really well. Nothing's fallen off and nothing has broken. So the car's got a butt ton of miles on it. I forgot to mention when we bought the car, it only had like 30,000 miles on it. It was an ex-lease vehicle. It had come originally from Seattle, so it had a really easy first couple of years, and then we bought it and we took it to hell and back. And I say we do drive long distance in it from time to time. Now we have the Chevrolet Bolt. We tend to take the Bolt instead of the LEAF, but on occasion this car has done several hundred miles in a day. It can rapid charge multiple times. If I'm out and about doing stuff, my wife takes it and she still does long distance trips in it. She's rapid charged 2 or 3 times recently in a day with this car, and it's just coped with it just fine. Let's talk about reliability. How has this car been? Well, we did have one instance not so long ago, beginning of the year, when we ran out of charge. My wife was making a long distance trip and she had forgotten to take the relevant charging things with her, and she decided to risk it, ran out of charge late at night. And it's, I think, the first time that we've ever had an instance where this car has completely run flat and we've not been able to just plug it in. I ran out of charge in this car on a winter's day once, but I ran out of charge just as the car was coming up to a charging station, so I was able to coast in. My wife completely ran out of charge and I had to rescue her. And interestingly, she put the hazard warning lights on because it was at night, and she also put the lights on. By the time I got to her, the battery was flat, which then meant that we had to have a jump start of the 12-volt battery to be able to put the car into neutral to get it on the back of a tow truck to get it back to the charging station. But as soon as we got to the charging station, it behaved itself, it perked right up, and it was fine. If you've watched this channel for any length of time, you'll also know that we replaced the 12-volt accessory battery about 2 years ago now. It is still going strong. We've not had any issues with that other than the aforementioned running flat because we ran out of charge in our main battery and then we left the lights and the indicators on. Other than that, servicing has been something we haven't really done a whole lot of. I think we've had 2 services since we've had this car, which is not necessarily to Nissan's recommendations, but the car has been performing just fine. No lights breaking, no issues with the wheels, with the steering or anything like that. We did upgrade the telematics system when Nissan stopped supporting the 2G telematics system that this car came with. We upgraded it to a 3G connection, and that connection is sometimes a little spotty. It's fine around town, but up on the hill sometimes we do find it doesn't connect, whereas our Chevrolet telematics system just connects every time just fine. We've had one modification to this car. That's the wireless inductive charging system we got as a review unit a while ago. The company behind that I don't believe are in business anymore, so it's still part of the car. We don't use it because we found it used a lot of extra energy to charge the car, and my wife didn't like the way that you had to park the car super accurately. She just wanted to pull in and plug in. She found that easier. The only other thing that I would say is that we are no longer running on our original tyres that came with this car, we're now running on Nokian N tyre 2.0s, which are like the summer tyre from Nokian that fit this car. They're very good, they're very efficient. I prefer them to the Michelin Energy Savers. But other than that, this car has been absolutely fantastic. Would I recommend someone buy one of these first generation Nissan Leafs today? Absolutely, if the following criteria are met. You have access to rapid charging infrastructure if you do need to make that long distance trip. You don't live somewhere where it's super hot. It is nearly 100 degrees Fahrenheit here today in Oregon, and it's at that kind of temperature that the battery really starts to suffer. Luckily, because we're at a higher elevation in the evening, the car does get to cool down. It is a lot cooler up in the hills than it is down here in the valley. But if I was in Arizona, Southern California, or any southern hot state, especially a hot, humid state, I would worry about this car because it doesn't have active thermal management. But if you're in somewhere where, you know, the summer temperatures don't get super hot, then I have no faults to give this car. It has been super reliable. It's been just a daily driver, which gets me to the conclusion that I want to make here. After, you know, 4 years of ownership, next year the finance for this car will be paid off. We've got a super low loan from our credit union to buy this car. We may keep this car. We haven't decided for sure yet, but it has been super reliable. And as long as it doesn't drop a huge amount of range this winter, we will probably keep it. I should note that our daily driving requirements of this car are much higher than your average person. You know, we do 50 miles a day in it. Most people would only need to do 20 or 30, and for that, this car would be ideal. So if you're in the market for a Nissan Leaf or a used electric car, this is a good starting place as long as you're not in one of those hot places. I love this car, it's been super reliable, and I do have a soft spot for it, despite it only having a real world 55 to 65 miles of range. So that's it from our Nissan Leaf review. I'm curious to see if you've got one of these in New Zealand. Do you have one of the Japanese import ones? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for joining me. I'll be back soon. Ka kite.